Finland is one step closer to becoming NATO's newest member. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said that Turkey's parliament will vote on ratifying Finland's bid to join the 30-nation alliance. He made the remarks during a press conference with his Finnish counterpart, President Sauli Niinisto, in Ankara. Citing Finland's fulfilment of its pledges made in Madrid last year to combat terrorism, President Erdogan reiterated that Turkey remains open to NATO's expansion. The Finnish president welcomed the news.
Finnish NATO membership, it is very good to hear this news. We understood earlier on that you have done your decision, and signing it today confirms that the Turkish parliament starts to work with the ratification of Finnish membership.
Following Russia's attack on Ukraine last year, Finland and Sweden formally applied to join NATO. But Turkey raised concerns over Sweden's tolerance of the PKK terror group operating on its soil. Last June, ahead of a NATO summit in Madrid, both Sweden and Finland pledged to crack down on terror groups in exchange for Turkey's support to join the alliance. President Erdogan said on Friday that Sweden has failed to follow through with its promises. All 30 NATO states must approve the addition of any new members. And to further discuss the Finnish president's visit to Turkiye and its NATO bid, joining me now from Istanbul is Helin Ertem. She is an associate professor at Medeniyet University, and Stephen Horrell from Annapolis, Maryland. He is a senior fellow at the Center for European Policy Analysis. A warm welcome to you both, and thanks for joining me on Straight Talk. So, Helin, today at a joint press conference with his Finnish counterpart, Turkish President Erdogan said his country will start the process to ratify Finland's NATO membership. What's your take on that, and how significant was that?
Well, actually, since the very beginning, we had a strong opinion that Turkey would tend to separate two countries from each other, because the case of Finland is a bit different than Sweden, because the anti-Turkey campaigns, the pro-PKK groups in Finland are quite limited. For that reason, I guess Finland's job was a bit easier than Sweden, and we witness the same thing today. We cannot talk about Sweden on the same line, and Turkey has been warning Sweden for a long time to regulate its laws for anti-terrorism. However, unfortunately, Sweden somehow could not move on, could not make greater improvements on that to satisfy Turkey. And today, President Erdogan announced that Turkey opens the discussions in its parliament to give the ratification to Finland.
So, Stephen, is this a turning point for NATO? Talk to us about its importance.
So this is very important for NATO. The accession of both Finland and Sweden is very important for NATO. So this is the first of four remaining steps that need to be done for their accession. One more with Sweden and Turkey, and then Hungary ratifying both of those members' applications. It's problematic. Both of those countries and NATO have always preferred that the two enter together, because if one enters alone, it puts the other in a slightly more tenuous security situation.
So, Helin, you briefly mentioned Turkey was reluctant to approve both countries' inclusion into NATO on the grounds that they have given safe haven to terror organizations and their sympathizers. You've mentioned Sweden has failed to fulfill its commitments, but its new anti-terror law will take effect as of June the 1st. But for Finland, how has that changed?
Well, in a way, Finland, from the very beginning, was quite, let's say, careful about how to move on, how to react against the situation. And for that reason, somehow, I think we also witnessed a relative silence in the country regarding regarding pro-terrorist situations. However, in Sweden, we didn't witness the same thing, and we had a very difficult case like burning of our holy book, Quran, and the Swedish authorities actually couldn't prevent this catastrophe, which affected Turkey very much. Regarding Finland, at least it's a chance for Finland that it somehow could prevent such moves and somehow did not witness a big case that would increase Turkey's reaction regarding its possible membership.
So, Stephen, as for Sweden, membership talks seem to have stalled. What do you think? What are the prospects for Sweden's membership, and how would that impact the NATO alliance if Sweden is left out?
Sure. I would take issue with the assertion that Sweden has not made progress. There were 7 points that the 3 countries agreed upon in the trilateral memorandum last year. Sweden has made advances in all of them. You yourself mentioned the anti-terror law coming into effect. That includes financing of groups that will be done. They've amended their constitution to allow that. The idea that Sweden has not done everything in the trilateral memorandum is I think, off target. So again, as I said, NATO's preference is for the 2 countries to enter together. So it's not as cohesive a bloc up there in the Baltic region with one gap with Sweden. And again, it would put that country all alone, where previously Sweden and Finland with their non-aligned status at least had the strength of being 2 together. So leaving Sweden dangling that way is bad for NATO and potentially risky for Sweden.
So, Helin, now that Turkey will work to ratify Finland's NATO membership, how will that impact the 2-country relations moving forward? I mean, how would Finland approach to, for example, Turkey's anti-terror operations as well as its membership talks with the European Union moving forward?
Well, Aisha, first of all, I would like to underline that, yes, Sweden might be doing something. Probably, yeah, it tried in an official base, but unfortunately, on practice, we don't see the same thing happening in Sweden. I mean, it's a kind of, somehow showing a weakness against these opposition groups, which creates a big fuss inside Sweden in an anti-Turkey way, anti-Turkey protests and so on. So what they are doing in physical way in terms of changing their laws and so on, it doesn't suit with what we are witnessing in the practice. For that reason, I think Turkey quite well observes this situation, this dilemma on the Swedish side. Regarding the Finland case, I guess witnessed a quite good political move during our earthquake era in Turkey. They sent international aid to Turkey, and President Erdogan today underlined that Turkey is thankful regarding Finland's support to Turkey during the earthquake era. From now on, I think we will have a rapprochement between these 2 countries, and this rapprochement might cover the EU issues as well. I guess, I'm sure the NATO as a whole doesn't prefer to separate 2 countries from each other, but Turkey has the right, and quite rightful in its case, to separate 2 countries from each other, unless there is a big move from the Swedish side, which would persuade Turkey that it has done enough, which satisfies Turkey.
But Turkey is not the only country which is separating these 2 countries. Stephen, Hungary has said it would also vote on the ratification of Finland's NATO accession on March 27th. The country will decide on Sweden's accession later. So what's your take on that? Are Turkey and Hungary coordinating in this regard? I mean, is there a shared interest between both countries when it comes to the Nordic nations' memberships in NATO?
Yeah, I would not too closely. I think Turkey and Hungary are acting in each of them in their own national interests as they perceive them. It was heartening that Orban was present for some of the visit between Erdogan and Niinisto. Hungary's trying to use this, it seems, to leverage their own issues within the EU. So let's remember, the EU has pointed at the Orban government as backsliding and having corruption and democracy problems, and so Hungary is really just using this situation to try and advance their interests in that regard. frankly, it's more problematic than Turkey's objections.
So, Helin, what kind of political ramifications are we likely to see between Turkey and Russia once the Turkish parliament officially approves Finland's membership? How would that affect the Ankara-Moscow line?
Well, once again, I think we should remember Turkey's traditional foreign policy attitudes, which is a balance of power attitude. We tend to balance two superpowers in so many years, maybe during the whole Cold War era and even before, during the Second World War. So Turkey is following a delicate balance policy in between the United States, namely the West, and Russia during the Ukrainian crisis. So I think from today's perspective, we can say that Turkey has been quite successful to move on with this balanced policy. And from then on, I guess from today on, we will see the same balancing act from Turkey. And I also would like to express that I guess the division between the government and the opposition in Hungary regarding the new country's accession to NATO is quite bigger than Turkey. I don't see the same thing in Turkey, and I believe that even the opposition in Turkey would support the government's move regarding possible entry of Sweden as a new NATO member. Turkey has never been against the widening of NATO. It underlines its support for the open door policy of NATO, but at the same time, it has every right to make the bargaining regarding Sweden's accession.
So, Stephen, Russia's border with NATO will increase approximately from 1,200 kilometers to around 2,500 kilometers, almost double. So, and we know that Russia has previously said it would respond accordingly to these nations' memberships in NATO. What should we expect from Moscow now?
I think we definitely have to expect a lot of bluster from Moscow. And you will see Putin and other Kremlin sources really try to leverage this. It's important to note that, NATO enlargement has not been aggressive. It's been NATO saying yes to countries that feel threatened by Russia wanting to join the defensive alliance. However, in the information arena, Putin has managed to spin this so a lot of the rest of the world has bought into the lies coming out of the Kremlin. But NATO is not there to threaten Russia. NATO is there to protect its members. We'll definitely see more bluster from Russia coming up, and they'll try to take advantage of any potential divides within the alliance. That's the other sort of harmful thing when you've got two holdouts. Each of the NATO members has to act in their own interests. But in this case, if you create a division, you allow the Russian advantage, especially in the information arena.
So, Helin, do you think Turkey would be still well positioned to assume a mediating role and facilitating role between Russia and the alliance, or has it lost it now?
No, it still carries that very significant role. I guess it still has this role. This is very much needed, not only by Ukraine and Russia and by the West as well. It is very important globally. We talk about the grain deal, which Turkey mediates for. We talk about many other issues regarding energy supplies from Russia, from Ukraine to the West. For that reason, the issue is quite complicated. It has so many details to deal with. For that reason, I guess both Russia and the West, namely the United States and Europe, needs this mediation. They need this mediation, and Turkey has been playing this significant role for a long time. I guess the accession of Finland wouldn't damage that. In my point of view, it would not very much affect Turkey's relations with Russia as well. Yes, there will be a symbolical reaction, of course, from Russia towards the Turkish side, but I still think that this would not damage the bilateral relations to a greater extent.
All right, Helin and Stephen, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk.